Students, today we will talk about a new political ideology, that is feminism. We are going to talk about what feminism is all about and how this concept evolved, and then how it continued through the ages. This is Dr. Bijendra Kumar, and I'm going to teach you one concept, that is feminism. Now, if you see this concept, it evolved in mid of 19th century. 19th सेंचुरी में ये इवॉल्व होता है। इवॉल्व होने का कारण क्या है? बहुत सारे कारण हैं और सबसे बड़ा कारण है वुमेन मूवमेंट। वुमेन मूवमेंट्स, right? Now, women movements got inspired from anti-slavery movement. You know, slavery was prohibited. It was abolished in Europe. Now, women thought, if slave can be free, why we cannot, right? And if you look at, there was a many philosopher, for example, look at Mary Wollstonecraft. Right? She wrote a text, an essay that is called Vindication of Rights of Women. Vindication of Rights of Women in 1792. Now, if you look at, she talked about civil and political equality between man and woman. Civil and political equality between man and woman. Now, if you look at Mary Wollstonecraft, was a pioneer of feminism. Pioneer of feminism, right? So, first thing we should know that feminism is all about equality. It is not about only women. जो फेमिनिज्म एक पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी है, ये समानता के बारे में है, इक्वालिटी के बारे में है, इक्वालिटी बिटवीन मैन एंड वुमन. It is not about women, right? Now, if you look at the feminism that developed in the mid of 19th century, right, and it was contributed by many philosophers like J.S. Mill. Then, if you look at his wife, Harriet Taylor Mill, right? These are the philosophers. They actually focused on equality between man and woman, right? Now, if you look at this development, these were the contexts that was prioritized by women movement. Now, if you look at, they were called liberal feminism. This was the first wave of feminism that is called liberal feminism. इसको liberal feminism कहते हैं. Demand क्या है? Demand यही था, equal civil and political right. If you look at demand of the liberal feminism, early feminism, equal civil and political right. Equal civil and political right. Rights. Now, if you look at European society or even Indian society or any society, women are not equal and were not equal. महिलाओं को शादी करने का हक नहीं था. Women had no right to property and women were unequal. So philosophers like J.S. Mill, he was a great supporter, great votary of equality between man and woman. If you look at Harriet Taylor Mill, she talks about a right to vote to women. Right to vote to women. So if you look at the major demand, demand was equal civil and political right. For example, equal right to marry. If man has choice to marry for himself, then woman should have also a right to marry for herself, to choose their partner. If man possesses property, then woman also should possess property, right? If man has a right to vote, then woman should also possess right to vote. Now, if you look at the consequences, अगर हम इसका consequence देखें, result देखें, तो क्या हुआ, right? आप देखेंगे कि बहुत सारे legal reform हुए, बहुत सारे legal, civil and political reform हुए, right? और इस political reform में क्या हुआ कि women had given equality through the law. Look at New Zealand, which recognized a right to vote first time in 1893 for women, right? So if you look at the demand was equal and civil political rights. What was a way? What was a way to do it? The way was the civil, legal, and political reform, right? So this was the first version of liberalism, that is called first version of feminism, that is called liberal feminism. Now, if you look at the another versions, if you look at feminism, so first wave of feminism was liberal feminism. Liberal feminism, right, which demanded equality between man and woman, right? Now, second version of feminism evolved, that is called socialist feminism. Now, what is socialist feminism? It evolved in 1920s and onwards, right? It was inspired from Russian Revolution, okay? And if you see, there are many philosophers who started talking about that, look, civil, political, legal reform did not equate a woman. It did not deliver equality between man and woman. And therefore, what should be the equality? They talked about equal property right. Equal property rights, right, between man and woman. Now, if you look at, Marx did not talk about woman's right, but yes, his friend Frederick Engel talked about. And he said that, look at the history. What happens in the initial stage of history? In the initial stage of history, everything was equal. Man and woman were equal. Man and woman were equal. There was no private property. There was no private property. Look at the hunting-gathering stage of history, right? But what happened in the due course of time? Man acquired property and thought that this property is something real. So they did not only acquire property, but also subjugated a woman, right? And then after, generation to generation, man had transferred property to the son, not to the daughter. And that is actually root cause of inequality between man and woman. Now, if you look at the contemporary era, when Frederick Engel was writing, it was a capitalism. And capitalism was also sustained by private property, right? Now, look at the capitalism. It not only exploits man, but it also exploits woman, because women, cooks at home, pack food for their husband so that they can go to the factory, right? And workers in the factory are being exploited by capitalists. So if you look at the workers' work in the factory is much associated with the work done by women in the household. वो जो घर में काम करती है उससे जुड़ा हुआ है फैक्ट्री का काम, राइट? तो अगर वो एक्सप्लॉइट करता है, कैपिटलिज्म एक्सप्लॉइट करता है मैन को, तो केवल मैन को एक्सप्लॉइट नहीं करता है, किसको करता है? वुमेन को भी करता है. And therefore, what could be the solution? Right? Socialists said that abolish capitalism. And when you abolish capitalism, then it will give equality between man and woman. So this was the second version of feminism. Now let me talk about the third version of feminism, that is called radical feminism. Radical feminism. This was the third wave of feminism. And it evolved in 1960s and 1970s. Right? Now, why it is called radical? Because it was very much militant. It was, resistance was very militant. It was, not violent, but it was very much, challenging the authority of man. Right? So if you look at radical feminists, thought that even Russia, which was a symbol of socialism, was not equalizing man and woman. Women were still unequal. So they talked about the root cause of inequality is not actually socialism or private property. The root cause of problem is actually cultural problem. And if you look at the inequality begins at a family, right? Now, family, if you look at, there is a husband and wife. There is a, brother and sister, right? There is an inequality between husband and wife. There is an inequality between brother and sister, right? So therefore, we need to equalize family, right? And they coined many terms. For example, they, gave a phrase which is very popular, that is called personal is political. Personal is political. They also talked about, patriarchy. They also defined patriarchy. They also differentiate between sex and gender, right? They also talked about, right, differentiated equality. Differentiated equality. This is all terminology and phrase we will discuss in the next video. If you like the video, we are going to start PSIR class at Shankar IAS Academy Delhi branch on July 15th. And you all are welcome to study PSIR with me. Thank you so much.